Hello, welcome to another edition of the League's review slash preview show. I'm your host, your co-commissioner, and your first ever league champion, the original Samuel T. Wood. Welcome to the show. Today we're going to look at last week's semi-final games. We're also going to look ahead to the championship game and the other games that are on this week. And lastly, we will look at some of the rule changes that we will be implementing in the next year. Stay tuned for that, because I'm sure some of you are going to come and criticise me in the office of the league over these changes, but they will all be explained during the video. So let's start off. Craig Willis, co-commish, last year's runner-up, going up against Andrew Brunning. Very good matchup, very good, solid scoring. Craig put up a good fight, just did what he knows best, kept going with his core team of Gronk, and his quarterbacks let him down this week. You know, the quarterbacks have been good to him, Peyton and Stafford. You think you'd find one in there that's going to score at least 30. Wasn't to be for Craig. He moves on from this. Sure, it's a tough defeat to take, but I think you've seen from Craig, it's no coincidence that Craig has finished in the top 4 and the top 2 years in a row. Good knowledge, and has performed very well again this year. And he'll be back. You know, it might be a bit like the Indy Colts under Peyton, where it's going to take him 4 tries to win a trophy. But you know, every year he's up there in the regular season, which is a great credit, and that shows real consistency and continuity in team. So unlucky Craig. As for Andy, congratulations to Mr. Brunning on reaching the final in his first year. It's a big achievement. Would be a bigger achievement if it wasn't for the trade of DeMarco Murray, but it's still fairly impressive. But I think if without DeMarco, this is a great achievement. Sadly, he's got an asterisk next to his name. Even if he does go on to win it, it's going to be a massive asterisk next to it saying, "Didn't win it with your team. He didn't do a fair trade to get there, buddy." But you know, moving on. Good luck to him in the final. Next game, the league champ going up against Charles Smith, another experienced player. Terrible game, low scoring, 130 points. Came down to the wire, you know. Jordy Nelson makes a catch, Wood wins it. Jimmy Graham holds on to a touchdown, he wins it. Wasn't to be for Wood, you know. I think he's come away with an understanding that his team, on paper, top draw. You know, you put that team in a sort of draft today of NFL players, those 6 players collectively will go the highest. I'm sure of that. But it just wasn't to be again for Wood. He's at peace with the loss. You know, he spoke to Charles and congratulated him, and he knows Charles will put up a good fight in the final. On a personal note, he's got another team to manage. They're actually in a championship game, so yeah, he's busy with concentrating on that team at the moment, working his magic over in the other league that he plays in. Names don't win titles is something I've got down here. Names do not win titles. I think that's shown this year for Wood and for other players. You've got to go where the points are and sometimes forget about the names. And he's fallen short this year. He's going to come in the top 4 guaranteed. That's again like Craig. He won it last year. Top 4 this year shows a real plethora of knowledge and a real understanding for the game. So unlucky, but moves on. As for Charles, his team moves on to the final. He did it without Julio, which is impressive. It's an impressive win for Charles. Lucky in a sense. Even if whoever would have won would have been lucky to win it. But he's done some good work to get there, and we wish him all the best in the final as well. Now we're going to move on to the title game. It's an interesting one. 2 players that have never been there before, so it's a new experience for them. I'm sure they'll be excited to be in the final game. For me, it comes down to if Julio Jones is ready to go. If he's not, Charles could have a bit of bother, because Edelman, yeah, he's putting up good numbers, but I'd like to have my top receiver in that team with Randall Cobb. You know, I know they've got an agreement in place, I believe, not to pick up any players, which is a strange one, but okay. I think with Julio Jones, it's if he can go and put up a big score, then his team looks pretty damn solid with Le'Veon, and if Shady again is another one. You know, last year red hot, this year tepid. I think he needs a big week to get there, to win the final. Having said it, obviously he's going against Brunning, who's got a good team, and he's got a player in DeMarco Murray who is actually got a bit of an injury at the moment. It'd be quite ironic if that cost him the title, but if DeMarco's going, obviously you know he's the most important player on Andy's team because he stole him. But I think it's going to be a good game. I think it will be fairly low scoring, to be honest. I think 160, 165 wins it. I don't see it being a big title game this year. It's two characters that are lacking in personality, if you ask me, lacking in a bit of trash talk. They seem to be so pally. You don't want that in sport. You want a bit of fire between the players. You're playing for a final title, the final championship of the year. You know, you need to have a bit of fire. I think it's a bit Seattle, Denverish, a bit boring. It's not like you see in the Giants and the Patriots, or you know, let me go back to the Steelers versus the Ravens in an important game. You just don't get that feel with this title game. It's a bit lacking. So yeah, we'll watch with interest and intrigue to see who wins, but it's a bit of a tepid one if you ask me. Lastly, now this is the controversial bit, I guess. Going to go through some rules for next year. If you've got any issues, please either write directly to me or Craig, co-commissioners, or on the WhatsApp chat. That's more than acceptable. Or if you want on the wall, if you want to be an idiot. But okay. Anyway, let's get on with the rule changes. Let's start off. From next year, there will be no more than 2 roster purchases per week. And I'm even considering, again, we're going to ask the league players what they think. Perhaps we move to 1 roster purchase in the playoffs to make it a bit more interesting, to make it a bit more tough. You've got to pick right. You've got to really think about who you start. You can't try and put your team, the players that are playing early, out, and then hold your ones playing late back and buy them. That's sort of what's happened this year, and it's not been as good this year because of that, I think. So we're going to move to maybe have 2 roster purchases in the normal season. In the post, only 1. Maximum 2 in the post-season. So that's one rule. Secondly, trades will be reviewable by commissioners. They will decide whether a trade is accepted or not. If both parties in the trade cannot show a valid reason why they've made the trade, then the trade will be vetoed. So obviously the clear example of this year, which we won't mention, obviously, if you're going to trade away your best player, maybe the best player in the league, for a pile of garbage, that is not going to be accepted this year. If a trade's slightly unfair, but you can make a valid case to why you would want the certain players, maybe you're lacking a quarterback or lacking a running back that you get a top 15 running back and a decent quarterback for a top 5, top 10 receiver, that's acceptable. What is not acceptable is giving away your garbage for the best player in the league. So that will be a rule from next year. That is non-negotiable. That is iron in stone, no discussion. Okay, now an interesting one from this year. If you leave your computer logged on, your user area logged on, or your NFL user area logged on, then whoever finds it can and is allowed to write on the wall, because frankly it's got a bit ridiculous with the amount of computers that are being left on at League HQ, including the commissioner, co-commissioner, sorry. So if you do, you can write on the wall, but that is it. You cannot look at their team, you cannot look at their waivers. If you do that, that is obviously a tough and unfair thing and an immoral thing to do. So that'll be a rule from next year. Lastly, now this one is going to be hugely controversial, and I've wrestled with this for a couple of days now, deciding what's best to do. For next year's draft, I think we're going to have to randomise it, simply because of the amount of new players we're probably going to have. We're probably going to have at least 3 new players come in. So if we have 3 new players come in, it's going to mean that we can't really give them the first 3 picks in the draft. That's not really fair. We have to give everyone a fair chance to get the first pick, I believe, or as high a pick as possible. So we're probably going to look to randomise it. Still snaked, still like it was. So if you draft at 10, you'll pick at 11 as well. But if we have new players coming in, it's the only way we're going to be able to do it. That is going to mean, and I know this is going to be controversial, that we're not going to be able to honour, as a league, the draft picks that were traded this year. This is going to be controversial, I know, but you don't know what you were trading, so some of you may not want to give away your pick because it doesn't get you as much anymore, or you're giving away more than you thought you were going to be giving away. So it's not really fair to give the draft pick away. So that's how we're going to have to do it, because it's being randomised now. Obviously, feel free to message us. Please don't just start with the usual dictator, cheat nonsense. Actually come up with a valid reason why we shouldn't do this. If you can do that, we'll look at changing it. But it's been a great year. We're obviously finishing up this week. I will be doing a award show at some point with some of the players, and hopefully, where we're going to be, some of us actually be together, we can maybe do a little have a little chat about what's best, some of the awards we can give out, and things of that nature. But as your commissioner, it's been a pleasure. Obviously, if anyone does want to challenge me, feel free to step up to the plate. Signing off, as your commissioner, we've got one more review show coming, but thank you for watching and goodbye.